I think what's happened over the weekend has been quite remarkable in terms of how far the U.S. and the European Union have come, really in just a few days. The sanctions which were announced last week when Russia first began its incursions into Ukraine were very, very similar to the actions that were taken during the invasion of Crimea. I think that Putin probably anticipated that, the Russians probably anticipated that, and were prepared to accept that cost. What we've seen in just over the weekend has really been the announcement of the intention to wage all-out financial warfare. Now, I think we need to be careful. It's just the intention that was announced. We'll see over the next few days how the EU and the US really plan to implement that. But once fully implemented, it will begin in real ways to cut Russia off from Western financial markets, Western capital markets, stock markets. Russia really is going to find itself economically and financially excluded. And the EU and the US are economic and financial superpowers. It's not a fair fight if the EU and US are really prepared to go down that road.
Daniel, excluded from Western financial markets, and the Western financial system, I think, is the key here. We're not talking about Cuba, we're not talking about Venezuela, we're not talking about even Iran as well. Is it possible, though, that an alternative financial system between Russia and perhaps allies further east, perhaps with the Chinese as well, could be a viable alternative for the Russians in the medium term? I appreciate in the short term they can't turn to alternative markets, but in the medium term, is that a likely scenario?
It depends on what you mean by alternative. It is something that will likely be available to Russia if it decides that the price it's willing to accept is to become a junior partner with China and some sort of access with China, excluded from the West, excluded from all the luxuries and conveniences that come with that. And rely and become a dependent on the Chinese financial system. Russia, as you said, is not Iran, it's not Cuba, it's not Venezuela. It's a G20 economy that has a huge population, that has real businesses, that has people who are used to a certain standard of living, and China, is not going to rescue Russia from that. China could keep Russia afloat. But I think that the Russian people at a certain point are going to want to do a little bit better than just merely being kept afloat.
Daniel, these financial measures are seen as another tool in a broader armory, whether it's military pressure, political pressure, financial pressure as well. Do you see the ultimate aim of these financial sanctions against Russia as regime change? Whenever I've seen sanctions like this used in those countries that you and I have just mentioned, it's been more or less about the West wanting some form of regime change in those countries. I know it's a big question, but do you think that's ultimately the aim of these sanctions?
I do agree with you that in the past, when these types of measures have been used, they've been used in the context of regime change. Even just targeting the head of state of a country would, under other circumstances, be regarded as regime change. I don't think that's what the United States and its allies and the European Union are looking for right now. I would be very surprised if they adopted a regime change policy in the sense that. In the sense that term has been used in the context of Iraq or other places. No, I think that they're looking for a change in policy from Russia, albeit at this point a massive change in policy, and I think a change that's very unlikely to occur.